Let's start rigging a two-legged character. Set your project directory and look inside the Rigging 2 folder for a folder called Bodybuilder. Double-click on that and click OK. Then go to File. We're going to load from the Objects folder an object called bodybuilder.lwo. Bodybuilder looks fairly chunky in this view. It's because it's made from a really coarse set of polygons. It's actually made for subdivision surfaces. While the object's selected, tap the Tab key to turn it into its subdivision surface counterpart. Tab back into polygonal mode, and we'll start cleaning up the scene to set him up. Let's redlock the camera with the right mouse click and change the draw mode to N. We'll also redlock the bodybuilder because we won't be altering its position or its pivot point on this mesh. Set its draw mode to F so we can see what the bones are doing to the mesh. We'll click into setup mode and switch to a left view. Now, many of you have started rigging bipedal characters the first time you've loaded up Messiah. You've seen many examples, so I'm going to go through a quick speed rigging session here and explain briefly what I'm doing. While the bodybuilder is selected, go to the Effects sub-tab. We're going to pick a bone deform from the pull-down menu. Click on the plus key to add that bone deform. We're going to name this bone deform the name of the character, which in this case is Nate. And we're going to name the bone deform node underneath it Nate. We can drag this anywhere in the scene. I'm going to drag it to the top of the scene. Use the plus key to add a bone. We'll drag that to the bottom. This will be our first control. Drag this up on Y till it's about level with the belly button. Let's decrease the scene view here. Go back to items to get a full list. We're going to decrease the size of this bone. Go to the Bone tab and change the slip to 1 so it doesn't distort any of the mesh. We'll call this bone Hips. Add a transform null. Call this one the name of the character, Nate _ back X form. Add that. We're going to parent that to the hips. See, it jumps to the origin of the hips. We'll pitch this one up 90 degrees so all of the children will aim up 90 degrees as well. Select one of the bones, use the plus key to add another bone, parent that to back X form so it starts aiming straight up and down. We'll go to the rest block. We're going to zero out the Z translate so they start at the same origin. I like my backs to have at least 2 or 3 joints. We're going to start with 2 here because it's a fairly coarse mesh and we don't need to worry about the spacing as much. This bone aims straight up. Tap another bone in there with the plus key. We'll move this one back a bit and position the end of this bone right over the shoulder. Plus key again. I'm going to pitch this one forward and adjust the tip of this so it's right underneath the ear. Plus key one last time. Pitch this so it aims straight up and down on world view. Double click on the first bone. We'll call that one back 1. The next bone, back 2. Next bone is neck. And then the last bone in the chain here is head. Let's go to a front view and we're going to start with the right side of the shoulder setup area. Click on back 2, add another bone with the plus key. We'll rotate this one out on heading and adjust it so it's right on the edge of the inside of the shoulder. Switch to a top view. We'll rotate it on pitch so it's right in the middle of the shoulder and the mesh. We'll go back to a front, plus key to add another bone. We'll rotate this one up and use the right mouse click to adjust everything on local axes. You can switch to different views to change that so they face straight left in the world view. Adjust the length of this bone so it's right in the middle of the shoulder blade. We'll call this first bone clavicle R, and the second bone, which is a reorienting bone, shoulder R. Go back and middle mouse click highlight clavicle. We're going to create a triangle of influence that goes back down to back 2. Adjust the length of this so it aims at the base of back 2. Switch to a left view. It lines up pretty well. We'll call this bone back muscle R. That will be turned into a muscle bone later on. This is the basic setup for the upper spine. Let's switch to a left view and add parts of the lower body. Middle mouse click on any bone, tap the plus key to add that bone. We'll parent that to back X form so it aims straight up and down. Go to the Move tab and zero out the Z translate. We'll pitch this down 180 degrees so it aims down, maybe even a little past. Adjust the length so it's right about the middle of the thigh. We'll call this bone butt. Let's go to a front view again. Plus key to add that too. We're going to go to the Bone tab, uncheck Align Z to Parent so it doesn't stay on the end of its parent. We'll zero out the Z translate, move this over on X, and this will be one of the support bones for the hips. We'll adjust the length of this so it's right in the middle of the swimming suit. We'll call this one leg R. Plus key again, add another bone to that. We'll move this one up so it's just about where the hip joint will rotate. We'll call this one rotate leg R. This bone is actually control. We can turn off any of the axes here. We're just going to use bank. So right mouse click to turn off any of the colors and go to rotate, and we're going to only leave bank activated. We'll go to the left view. We're going to add another bone. Move this bone down. We'll pitch it forward until it's about where the knee is. Down once more. We'll pitch this one back and adjust its length till it matches the ankle. Switch to a front view. Let's grab the first one here. Rotate it on heading and adjust it so that the tip of the last bone is sitting right in the middle of the ankle. Switch to a left view again. We'll switch to the skeleton tab this time and use the option called split bone to turn these bones into two bones. That way they average out more evenly when the joint rotates. Split the second bone here and we'll start naming these. This first bone will be called thigh 1R. This next bone, thigh 2R. Calf 1R, calf 2R. We're going to add a muscle bone to compensate for the joint deformation. Start by middle mouse clicking on thigh 2R, add a plus key on that bone, go back to the bone tab, uncheck align Z to parent, back to rest, we'll zero out the Z translate, pitch this one forward, and adjust the length so it matches calf 2R on the base. Call this bone knee muscle R. Switch to a front view. Let's go to the bone. There's an option called muscle bone. We'll highlight that, and under the target we'll select calf 2R. You can see it pops slightly and the bone turns blue. If we go into animate tab and grab one of the leg bones on the knee and move it up, you can see that this bone is now compensating for the joint collapse. If it compensates too much, go back into setup, highlight the muscle bone, and set the slip to a small increment number, such as 0.02. Go back to animate and check your work. So 0.01 seems like it'd be a good option. Looks good to me. While we're in the motion block, we'll reset that keyframe to all, and we have the basic leg set up. Let's go to a front view. Switch to a front view, click into setup again. We'll go back to the shoulder and we'll set up the arm. Select shoulder R. We'll switch to a left view. The first thing we need to do is reorient that so heading is still on a flat plane on X. So we'll bank this backwards until Y is aiming straight up and down. Switch back to a front view, use the plus key to add a bone. We'll adjust this out until it reaches the length of the elbow and we'll pitch it down and lay it on top of the elbow. Go back to the top view, we'll adjust it on heading until it's about where the elbow will rotate. Let's go back to a front view. We're going to split this bone in the skeleton tab with the split bone 3 times, so it makes up 3 segments. Adjust the length so that each segment is equal in length. Middle mouse click on the middle bone, switch to a left view, and we're going to bank this back so Y is aiming straight out to the side. Go to the front. This lets us use our pitch axis for when we need to do IK chains. We'll name this first bone bicep 1R. The next bone bicep 2R. And then the third bone bicep 3R. While the last bone is selected in this chain, tap the plus key again. We'll rotate this up on heading. Adjust the length of this bone till it matches where the wrist will rotate. Switch to a top view. We'll pitch this forward. And we'll do the exact same thing. Go to the skeleton tab and we're going to split this bone into 3 segments. Adjust the segments so they're equal in length. And click on the middle segment, switch to a left view, and we're going to bank that until Y is aiming straight up and down. We're reorienting the hierarchy so heading still occurs in world axis. Go back to a front view. We'll middle mouse click on the last bone to select it. Add one last bone to that and pitch it down so it's level. Switch to a top view, and you can use left mouse or right mouse click to adjust the bone until it aims straight out to the left in world view. We'll call this chain of bones from the elbow on forearm 1R, forearm 2R, forearm 3R, and wrist R. Zoom out. This is the basic setup for half of the character minus the fingers and feet. Go to the File tab, and we're going to save this scene as into the Scenes folder as Nate _setup A.